In this episode of the Range Minded Podcast, we visit with Josh Best of 1156 Productions. This is a fun episode. It's a little long, but Josh is an absolute stud, and you need to stay tuned and listen why. Anyways, I hope you enjoy this episode of the Range Minded Podcast. All right, welcome back to the Range Minded Podcast. As usual, it's me, it's Steve, down here in the dungeon, recording another show. But I have a guest tonight, and I am actually very excited about this guest. We've been chatting back and forth for a little while. Finally made it happen. It's Joshua Best from 1156 Productions. And this dude, he's done some pretty cool things in his life, whether he believes it or not. I think it's cool. It looks cool at very least. Josh, why don't you introduce yourself a little bit more than what I have?
All right. What's up, guys? My name is Josh, owner, founder, director, producer of 1156 Productions, based in the Pacific Northwest. Stoked to be on the Range Minded Podcast with you, Steve. So thanks for having me on.
Absolutely.
Yeah, man, you make me sound way cooler than what I feel like I actually am. I'm just a guy with a camera and who believes in freedom and speaking truth and trying to do, my best to do that every day with what I make in media. So there you go.
And anybody that watches your content know that you're just more than a dude with a camera.
I don't think look, I'm
just a dude with a mic, so it's all good.
Yeah. It seems like anymore we live in a world that is surrounded by cameras, right? And so when I was thinking about, honestly, I've thought about trying to start my own podcast or whatever, try to find my own voice for a long time, but I just keep coming back to I'm just a guy with a camera. So just another dude with a camera, man, just trying to tell stories. That's about it.
So obviously 1156 Productions, that means and we talk about cameras. So what are some of the things that you do?
All right. So I hate using the term content creator. I think that's something that it discounts and kind of tries to put media, I guess content creators, right, for lack of a better term, into a container. So what I do is I am a videographer. I'm a photographer. I specialize in content for the defense industry, two-way community, outdoor adventure. So hunting, fishing, camping, backpacking, all that stuff. So I create content, mainly high quality photos and video for brands or people in that space, right? With the goal of eventually moving into more narrative film production, right? Which would be the actual cinematic stuff, movies, documentaries, short series, kind of like what you see on Netflix, that kind of stuff. That's the goal, is to get to there. But you got to pay the bills, and commercial projects do that. So, excuse me. That's what I do. But in tandem with that, I find I also do, it's like a 60-40 split, 60 being actual content creation, 40 being like marketing consultation, right? So partnering with brands in their content, but then also helping teach them how to distribute that in a way that's going to benefit their brand, right? So that's what I do.
So what got you into videography? Like, why that?
It's always been a hobby. So when I started out, my mom, when I was a kid, had a 35 millimeter film camera, and my grandpa was a photographer. He was a journalist, worked for the Spokesman Review, which is a newspaper here locally. He was a big outdoorsman, and he always packed a camera when he went out. So he gave my mom a camera. She gave me the camera, and I started taking pictures fairly young. And my mom, she was awesome, because what she would do is it wasn't just a point and shoot thing. She got kind of into it with me, where we did a couple of darkroom setups where we did the long exposures with flashlights writing our name on the film, right? But you had to do it backwards, which was tricky, but got into a more artistic form of photography, not just documenting things. So I was hooked on it right away, right? And so that kind of just stayed with me. When I turned 16, I got a job, after school job at a hobby shop in Spokane called Hobbytown USA. Worked there through high school and early college. And in that environment, I ended up being the manager of the remote control section for about 5 years post high school. And was building drones and RC airplanes and RC cars way before DJI was a thing. And started experimenting with throwing like our cell phone cameras and GoPros, whatever we could get that would roll onto these drones that we would build, just to get early aerial footage, which was pretty cool. And then from there, it wasn't even like a kind of a career option. I grew up kind of under the impression my dad, blue collar guy, worked in the utilities, always kind of grew up with this mindset that, the typical, you can't make money in art, right? So it always just was a for fun thing. So went back to college later. After my wife, we got married, she graduated college. I went back to school thinking I wanted to do mechanical engineering because of the drone building thing. And got 2 years into the mechanical engineering program at Eastern. Was working for construction and planning as an AutoCAD drafting technician while I was doing that. 2 years in, decided I did not care enough about engineering to take it all the way. So talked to my wife, changed majors to visual communication design, used some financial aid money, bought a camera, started being a yes man for whoever needed stuff shot. And it just kind of snowballed from there. So crazy random story for how I ended up getting into this, but God moves in crazy ways sometimes. So,
well, I think you're exactly right. Sounds like you had what you thought was the path, but he changed your mind for you.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Big time. It was kind of like, we live a very active lifestyle, right? We're very involved with our community, with our church, with our family, and trying to fit in 8 hours of advanced mathematics and physics and like ME homework on top of wanting to live our life the way we wanted to. It just wasn't realistic. I've never failed harder in my life at something than trying to get through that like second year or a couple of quarters of engineering before I decided to switch up majors. And it was tough, right? Because I'd always been the kid in school that, if I paid attention in class, I would nail it. I didn't have to, didn't struggle with the homework. If I just paid attention, I would just absorb it and I'd be able to spit it back out on the test. So I was always pretty, 3.5 to 4.0 student without having to try real hard. And then getting into Calc 5 with a professor that was very black and white and whether or not you had the chops or not to get through that class pretty much made my mind up for me. So it was good.
Yeah, that's it's crazy how life takes its course. But you're like tons of way farther than I ever did. I never went to college. Mm-hmm. I started a business not too long, after. Well, I guess I was probably 26-ish. I bet. Mm-hmm. Started a construction business. That's just been something that's been in my blood. Carpenter by trade.
Nice.
So, I mean, math sucks. I hate math a lot. Math and me do not get along. But I could figure out, stuff when it comes to woodwork. I can figure out angles and all that crap. It just comes naturally to me. So if I applied myself, probably should have gone to school and maybe got a little bit of education under my belt. I just took the hard road, I suppose.
No, the thing is, man, the public education system when it comes to universities, right, is so messed up that I don't understand to this day why they don't just teach mathematics as like an applied mathematics. Because, when you're sitting in a calculus class and you're learning calculus, and you're hit with these problems, they don't give you any real application for why you would ever care to know what the surface area of whatever something decagon shape or whatever would be. It's just like, hey, here's this weird shape, find the surface area using calculus. Like it's integrals and derivatives or whatever for at least Calc 2, I think. And I'm sitting here trying to learn this. And of course, at the time, the rule is you can't use calculators. You can't use any modern tools. It's all got to be done by just working the problem. And, you know, for me, my motivation was like, well, when am I going to use it, and why? And when in life would I ever try to tackle this problem realistically without a calculator? Right. And so I'm a little bit of a rebel by nature. I like to ask questions about things. And so I struggled with just that in class, with just like, why are we doing it this way? Why do I have to learn it this way when in real life, I'm never, ever, ever going to be doing it this way? And then you go to physics. I actually liked physics because physics was taking the calculus and applying it to real world problems. Right. And then it started to click. I'm like, all right, that makes sense. Right. You need to learn this math because if you were going to design a rocket or something, this is where you would use it. I'm like, why don't they just teach it like that across the board? But you know, I'm not an engineer, so it doesn't really matter now anyway. But the math that you use, right, as the carpenters, I've done some construction. I'm a pretty handy guy when it comes to working some power tools as well. And the math that you guys know, I mean, that's like really the only important math, in my opinion.
Yeah, and then I like to make it complicated for myself. Sometimes I'll hope I messed with my board here. Sometimes I'll throw the metric system in there sometimes, and then just the standard measurements.
Mm-hmm.
The metric system confuses me, even though it's just tens. Like, it's just go through decimals. So sometimes I'll like, I built some fancy shoe shelves for this client I'm working with right now. Some fancy walnut to show off his Jordans.
Right on.
And I used all the metric system on that because I needed to know exact spacing for all these things. So sometimes I make it too complicated on myself. I guess that's what it's boiling down to.
It's all right, man. I grew up, I'm a Canadian. I have dual citizenship. I grew up in BC, so I got all kinds of messed up math between metric and standard. It's
so you have a natural love for maple syrup.
I do, actually. Yes, we go through a lot of maple syrup in my house. It's
probably the good stuff, though, not the garbage stuff you find in most grocery stores, I imagine.
No, it's real maple syrup. We're hooked on that. Costco, though, that's the place to buy it. It's like $12.99 for like 1 liter. So there you go.
Liter. Oh, there you are, throwing out the Canadian stuff again.
There you go. But yeah, it's fun with my kids because I argue with my wife on what the degree for freezing is. I just always know it is 0. She's like, no, it's 32. And I'm like, no, it's 0. 0 makes way more sense for freezing to me, but it's fun.
Yeah, we're Americans. We screw everything up.
Everything
we touch gets ruined somehow.
Yeah, well, you know, the thing is Canada's, you know, it's been tough watching what's happening in Canada. So it's
man. Yeah, I can't. Well, you probably just saw this too. They're not responding to crimes. Just let them steal your cars. Make sure you leave your car keys in your car so they don't break into your house. And it blows my mind.
Yeah, I can't wrap my head around it either. It's absurd, really, and idiotic. I don't understand, and I feel bad. Like, all my family, I got a lot of family up in Canada, and we go up there quite a bit still. And I can't wrap my head around it. It makes no sense.
So how long you been in the States then?
Oh, long time. I was almost 9 when we moved to Spokane. So 97 was when we moved. So we've been here, I mean, I don't know, 20 something years.
So your family moved straight to Spokane from BC.
Yep.
Awesome.
My mom is from Spokane. All my mom's family's in Spokane, and we would frequently visit in Spokane for family functions. So it wasn't a challenging move. Like, we knew where we were going, and that made it easy to get down here. So yeah,
nice.
It's been good.
And you love Spokane-ish?
You know, I do. I love the area. I love the region we're at. You couldn't get a better place geographically when it comes to, we got 4 even seasons, right? 3 months for each one. Spring, summer, fall, winter. We got within 100 miles, every different type of climate you could want. We got the desert to the south. We got rainforest to the west. We got high alpine to the north, and more of kind of a conglomerate to the east. We're in a very stable region. We don't have to worry about earthquakes. We don't have to worry about major natural disasters. I mean, it's like the best place in the world to be. The only thing that sucks about Spokane is that we're in Washington and we have to deal with West Side politics.
Yeah.
While being a stone's throw away from Idaho's freedom, right? So it's like,
yeah, you just got to cross the bridge, right? And
yeah, if we could just shave off, 100 miles and add it to North Idaho, we'd be great. It'd be perfect.
So what do you think about the greater Idaho movement then? I'm assuming that you'd be all for it.
Oh man, I'd be on board. Yeah, if that could ever, if there was a realistic chance of that ever happening, I would totally be on board for it. Yes.
Yeah, it's probably not going to happen, but it's fun to think about.
Right. Yeah, one can dream, right? But
I know the Idaho politicians are down.
Yeah, no, it's the west side of Washington has such a grip on that whole thing. It would never happen.
Yeah, and I've never been. Spokane's the only place of Washington I've ever visited. And even that, I didn't have a lot of time to visit. I was up there for some training.
Yeah.
In a previous life, I did some restoration work, and so I got sent up there to do a class, and it was just to the classroom and to the hotel. That was my only experience. I didn't get to see anything else of Spokane.
No, well, were you downtown?
I don't even remember. I don't think it was downtown. It might have been close. This was years ago. I don't really remember for sure where it was at.
Yeah, if it was downtown, I mean, that's one of the downsides of Spokane right now is we got a lot of problems. I mean, like every place has problems, right? But Spokane downtown especially has a massive homeless problem. We're a sanctuary city, so it seems like anytime something big happens in Seattle, they buy a whole bunch of bus tickets and send them all over here, and then we end up with we don't have the infrastructure to support that amount of homeless people, and so they end up all over the parks and all over downtown. I don't, I carry a gun everywhere I go anyway, but I will not take my family downtown unless there's if it is a public event. Spokane Police Department tries really hard, but the PD's got a lot of problems as well. We got a new mayor, and we had a pretty good chief in Craig Meidel, and he as soon as we got Lisa Brown elected, he put in his resignation.
That's
and I got a lot of buddies in law enforcement locally, and a lot of them, there's a lot of good officers that are thinking about leaving because of bad leadership. So I mean, it's a lot of towns are dealing with this, right? But Spokane is it's kind of like the biggest small town you'll ever be in. So you get the benefits of a big city with the relationships of a small town. And so to kind of see it go through this ridiculousness is very frustrating. So as much as I love Spokane, I love the people, we have a community here. It would be nice to not be in Spokane.
Sure. So what are, because I'm sure we might have some listeners that maybe or may not be familiar with some of the firearms laws in the state of Washington and the burden you have to deal with as a gun owner up there.
Yeah. So for me, and I feel it more, I mean, not just as a gun owner, but somebody who works and tries to support the gun industry, right? That's the people I want to support with the work I do. It's people are waking up and realizing they can't just go buy a weapon anymore, right? Because we now have, and I'm terrible with the actual particulars of the names of the laws, but I can tell you that there have been a few passed recently. Started with like the magazine ban. So high capacity magazine ban rolled out, I think, a year and a half ago now, almost 2 years, where restricted, you can't buy any magazine for any weapon that is larger than 10 rounds, right? So across the board, 10 round restriction on everything. That was the first one to roll out, and was working as kind of the marketing director for Axis Manufacturing, which is a local firearms manufacturer in Spokane. They're based out of Spokane Valley. And we ran a big giveaway of magazines leading up to the ban. So it was like we were trying to give away magazines. We were selling the heck out of them. So can't buy large magazines. That was the first one. And then they rolled out about a year ago now, the assault weapons ban, right? Basically, tried to one up California in their classification of what made a firearm an assault weapon. So characteristics like having a threaded barrel or having a folding stock or having, they tried to make it about the cosmetics of the gun, things that really have nothing to do with whether it is more effective at hurting people, right? But past that, right? And that effectively neutered the state of Washington when it comes to being able to own just about anything, right? Because the majority of handguns, the majority of ARs, rifles, across multiple platforms have at least one of those characteristics, and the way they classify it is if it has any one of those things, you can't legally own it. So yeah, very frustrating, and now they're trying to make it even worse. Now they're going after FFLs, and they're trying to do the syntax on ammo and everything like that. So it's tough. It sucks going into the shop because I still go down and I do work with the Axis guys, and I walk in there, and you really can't buy anything. You got a 10-day waiting period on just about every purchase. Now they're trying to make it. I think they just had an injunction on one of the line items in the new FF. Of like what they're calling the FFL killer, that new bill that restricted one firearm every 30 days for purchase, right? So, but I think there's a temporary injunction on that, but don't quote me on it. It's hard to keep up. I mean, it seems like every day there's a new law they're trying to force through Washington's House and Senate, and they got, Democratic control over both of those. And so it just seems like it's, an open border for gun laws in the state of Washington. If you want to own a lever gun or a musket, you can buy that.
What about a cannon?
A cannon? Yeah, no, you can't buy a cannon. Yeah, it's ridiculous. So, and for me now, even and you can't even ship, a lot of guys aren't even shipping the parts, right? So if I wanted to, I bought a whole bunch of upper and lower. Well, I probably shouldn't talk too much because it's going to go out, but I bought some things before the ban, and I got a bunch of build projects I want to do, but I'm looking at manufacturers that most of them won't ship the parts even, right? It's not it's non-serialized part, right? But they still won't ship to Washington just because of the hassle and what it could do to them. And so it sucks. I work with some brands out of North Idaho. I occasionally work with the guys at Genesis Arms, and some of the guys down in Boise, and it sucks because you go down and, you get to play with it and shoot it and all that, but you can't own it. I'm like, man, it sucks a lot.
Kicking the junk, kind of.
It is, yeah, especially in a lot of ways too, because some of these smaller manufacturers don't necessarily have massive marketing budgets. I tried to also work out trade deals, right, where it's like, hey, I'm a shooter, I like owning guns, and if let's trade. How can we make this work? But you can't do that either, right? Because can't legally own it. So, it's frustrating, and a lot of industry is moving out of Washington because of it, right? With the FFL,
I don't blame them.
They're putting on FFLs. I mean, it won't be long before it's really going to be probably only Aero Precision and a handful of other smaller manufacturers.
I didn't even know they were. Are they in Spokane?
No, they're out in. They're on the west side.
Wow. But I didn't know they were in Washington altogether. Shame on me.
Yeah, well, they are for now. I don't know how much longer they will be. But yeah, I think they're one of the biggest manufacturers biggest firearms manufacturers in the state of Washington for now, like I said.
I know it's a little anecdotal, and maybe you won't be able to answer this, but did you notice or have you seen an increase of crime or at least negative consequences from these laws that have been pushed?
I mean, no, yes and no, right? There has been a rise in crime, right? If you look at the statistics coming out of the sheriff's department, local PDs, but it depends on the county, right? Spokane County has had a rise in crime, but the surrounding counties have not, right? And then a lot of it has to do with just it's really Seattle and Spokane, Tacoma, right? Tri-Cities areas got a lot of issues for sure. So yes, there has been a rise in crime in specific counties. Gun violence, it just across the board. A lot of petty theft, a lot of damage to property, stuff like that. A lot of drug use. You could argue that they're kind of related. That really kind of, it is getting worse. I don't know how to really explain this because I'm not an expert by any means, but yes and no.
It's got to be super frustrating, especially growing up in the town. And I imagine as a kid, you're probably used to walking down the street with no fear and hanging out late at night with your homies. And now it sounds like it's not the best of choices to make anymore.
Yeah, it depends on where you go, right? I mean, the thing that I found out recently talking to a couple of detectives is that Spokane has not been the greatest of places to be for most of its history because of where it's located. We're a transient city, right? We got I-90 runs straight through, so it's kind of like there's a lot of pass-through stuff. And Spokane has been, even back during Prohibition days, was known as a place where we made a lot of alcohol. During the cocaine issue, we had a lot of drugs. We still have a lot of drugs. We have a lot of sex trafficking problems in Spokane. So I mean, it's not like it's the gem, city by any means, but it has been, when it comes down to, again, being able to be a good place to raise your kids. Yeah, it's not great right now. I would like to not raise my kids here. But you go 10 miles down the road and you're in a totally different community. So, it's an interesting demographic. I learned when I was working at the hobby shop that Spokane is a beta testing city for a lot of companies because of our demographics. We have a lot of we got a lot of diversity in Spokane, and it apparently, if a new business or a new approach to something does well in Spokane, it'll do well just about anywhere. So we tend to have a lot of like small businesses that'll pop up. They'll be open for a year and a half, then they'll close. So it's kind of a weird, it's like a transitionary city for stuff.
Interesting.
Right? A lot of transit, drugs coming in and out, stuff going in and out. So it would be awesome. But again, I kind of think this is the way I think of it, right? There's no such thing as a perfect place on earth, right? If we didn't have the crime and we didn't have these problems, it would be too good, and then we'd have too many people moving here. So
yeah,
it's
that's what we're experiencing right now in Idaho.
Exactly.
I'm not saying Boise. I'm not in Boise anymore, but Boise, I actually like that area a lot. I'd totally move there, even though it's growing a lot. I'm on the east side of the state now, and we have license plates from all over the country now. People moving in. I grew up over here in a little tiny town, and it's not tiny anymore.
No, you can thank COVID for that, though, right? Like, I told my wife this the other day. I'm like, the thing is nobody used to want to buy a house in the country, right? People were all about the cities, and then COVID happened, and they realized that, oh dang, I don't want to be in the city, and now all of a sudden everybody's buying up all this land in the country and driving all the rates up for everyone. So
yeah,
I don't know.
And I don't know if it's if crime is necessarily going up. It sure feels that way. At least the perception of crime has gone up a lot, which I think it probably really has. And that also is pushing people into, out of the hustle and bustle into a place where they feel like maybe they can fortify their own little castle a little easier.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but I also learned that when I did landscaping and construction for a number of years between college and high school, and living in the country has its downsides as well, right? Your response time for law enforcement is a lot longer. And so what we ended up finding, like a couple of years ago, we found that we had a lot more people coming out from the cities out to the country to steal things because there's like a false sense of security. People leave their doors open, leave their gates unlocked, or leave their stuff out. And so it's easy to run out and grab it. And if they call the cops, you got a longer time to get in away. And it's kind of a catch-22, right? I was talking to my dad about this the other day because he was asking, like, because I've been training recently and buying ammo and doing all that stuff like everybody else, it seems like, and he was asking me about gun laws and such. And one of the things he was asking is like, well, if it does kick off, what's your plan? And I'm like, well, my plan for the longest time, if stuff went kinetic or hit the fan or whatever, was to go out to the woods and fortify with the family that we have out there. But I was a couple months ago, I was watching one of the Warrior Poet Society videos on YouTube, and I think, what's his name? Is it Matt? I forget the guy's name.
John?
John? Yes, John. There it is. He was talking about, probably the best plan if you're in town, which we are, is to fortify in place, have enough supplies to basically turn your house into a bunker for 30 to 60 days, because that's when all the killing's going to happen. And then after that, then you have your exfil plan. And so since I watched that video, I'm like, that makes a lot of sense. In our area, that's going to be everybody's plan. The battles are going to be fought in the woods for survival for the first little bit, because that's everybody's plan. So I told my dad, I'm like, look, this is our plan. Our plan is to turtle up, right? And then afterwards we'll exfil. But I'm like, your plan should be getting with your neighbors and talk, put together a strategy of how do you lock down access to your property? How many trees do you got to fall across the road? Putting together a plan of, understanding that you're going to have people coming out trying to take what you have, and it's not going to be a pleasant conversation, probably, right? So stuff like that, right? Yeah.
It's funny. I don't know if my parents ever thought that way. I think, well, maybe a lot of people are still that way. They just don't even think about what if, right? The what if scenario. But I think, again, like maybe the COVID thing, it woke a lot of people up and saying, hey, if toilet paper is impossible to get and I can't get fuel in my car, there's no way to survive. Right. It's kind of a scary scenario, and I don't think it's an impossible scenario to where we are stuck in one place for a period of time that we have to defend and stay warm. That's my biggest fear. Something happens in the middle of wintertime and I got to keep my house warm, my family, fed and warm.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's kind of wild. It's weird to think about, right? Because nobody wants to. It's an interesting time to be alive. I was talking to a buddy, and he's, sent me a video that was basically explaining that we have, because of the last, probably since the 40s, right? Which was kind of the last major, like the World War II, right? Was a big global conflict. But we've kind of had the luxury of the last, I don't know, almost 100 years to live in a pretty relative state of peace globally, right? There have been conflicts, there have been wars, but it's not been at our doorstep in the States, right? We've been very comfortable probably since the Civil War. And that's kind of lulled us into this false sense of security of thinking, hey, this is the normal. And if you look at world history, it's really not. Chaos and death have been a part of the norm since the beginning. And so it does, on one hand, I'm not stoked about where we're at. I really am hopeful that it stays good, but it does feel like we're due for some sort of major tough stuff, right? Either another global conflict of some kind, like a third world war, or at least something happening in the country. Not that I want that by any means, but it does feel like there's a lot of tension, right?
Yeah.
And we have, again, like I was talking to my wife the other day, I'm like, it just seems crazy that you watch what's happening with the election and stuff, and you're just kind of like, is this the best we got out of the entire country? These are the best people we have to lead this country are the people we have right now. And I'm like, come on.
Yeah, I was talking to a buddy of mine about just yesterday, actually. He's like, well, our choices are Donald Trump and Joe Biden, like two old men that, it's crazy. There are so many good options out there that could run, but I don't, conspiracy or not, I don't know what it is. We don't get that choice. The choice is made for us, and we only can pick one or two.
Yeah, well, the thing that the thing that to me, and I'm not a conspiracy theorist, right? This is what I believe about conspiracy theory. I believe if you can imagine it, it's probably possible, right? If you can make it in a movie, if a bad guy can be a bad guy in a movie and can be in a place of authority, it can probably happen for real. Money and power, right? Corrupt. That's happened throughout history. It happens over and over and over again. So to think that it can't happen to us is pretty arrogant, right? And naive, because it can absolutely happen to us. If you have control over the media, if you have I mean, we have people now on planet Earth who have so much money, like the wealth that some of these guys have at their disposal is compared to the rest of world history is insane, right? And so it's not absurd to think that if you have like that much money that you would want to have power and control, and you'd want to keep that power and control. And so it's not like, to me, it's not that big of a stretch to say, yeah, there's corruption, right? Yeah, there's, money and power. Yeah, they want to stay in power. Because if you look at it right now, I mean, I can't be president because I wasn't born in the States, but my son was born in the States. And if he wanted to be president, right, the American dream at the foundation kind of says that if you are an American, you can run for like you could, right? You could try, you could run. And if you had the charisma and the intelligence and the ability to go and debate and travel and do all that thing, and you could have a chance. But it seems like now it's like, unless you have millions of dollars or the ability to have super PACs backing you with times 10 millions of dollars,
Yeah.
There's no way, right? And
highly unlikely, which is sad.
Yeah, it should almost go to a lottery. I was thinking the other day, I'm like, it should almost be, there should be no salary. It should be like you get randomly picked for Congress and Senate. So you get like, you just get people running.
That would be great. At least
right?
At the very minimum, throw in some term limits to where, 2 terms, you're done, get out.
Right.
Get some fresh blood.
It's supposed to be public service, and nobody should really want to be.
Yeah. Well, and that's, and you maybe knew this before, but I remember watching some history show. Washington, D.C. originally was a swamp full of mosquitoes, and it was awful on purpose because they didn't want to keep politicians there. They wanted them to go back home.
Right. Yeah, and it should be, again, it goes back to we should have a small government. The federal government was never meant to be what it is now. It was supposed to be like local governments, communities, and then state governments, and then the states would go to the whole. Yeah, I mean, it's very much not. I mean, even I just did my taxes. I was like, man, I really didn't like doing my taxes this year.
It made you feel really patriotic, didn't it?
Oh, not so much, no.
I'm waiting for my taxes to come back. I'm pretty sure I'm going to, just like last year. First time ever I had to pay was last year, and I bet that's going to happen again this year.
Yeah, luckily, I mean, not luckily. I mean, for us, it's been, the studio, we've put almost all of the money that the studio has made, or the production company's made, back into equipment for the production company for the last couple of years. So as far as actually making money, our books show that we've pretty much had a zero. We've not been profitable technically, but
yeah.
Hopefully this year will change that. But it was very frustrating having to, especially, pay the state taxes and do that, knowing that, kiss that money goodbye, and it's going to be going to help make laws that I don't agree with, right? So, yeah, it's frustrating.
You mentioned earlier in that conversation about training. It's like, are there lots of good places to train over there? Some good ranges? Are there good instructors? Or do you get to travel?
No, I have to drive. So there's really not anywhere near Spokane unless you have private property up on like the mountains outside of the city limits where you can go shoot. And even then, it's when I train with my brother-in-laws usually, and we'll go out and we'll run drills. So we're a lot of self-taught, a lot of self-teaching, right? We have a couple of law enforcement buddies that will occasionally go out and try to get some more training from. I take a lot of what I learn from some of the guys that I shoot with and for, what I travel for, people like Lamb, right? Shoot with him a lot. Cody, Genesis Arms, I shoot with him a lot. Dave Mods out of North Idaho. He's kind of the guy that has been doing the most practical training with me, and it's not as much as I would like because I do have to drive about 40 minutes to get out to his range. But Dave, Dave's an awesome dude. If you have a chance, I don't know if you know of Dave Mods Customs or not, but he does some pretty awesome work, custom work in the handguns and rifle scene. He comes from he moved to North Idaho from Hawaii, and has an executive protection background. But his training is awesome. He likes to train from the position of, hey, like, look, we're civilians, we're not law enforcement, we're not military. But we don't, I'm not usually out there in a battle belt with full kit or anything like that. It's usually just my concealed carry, and we start from that. Because I'm like, if encounter a threat, it's probably going to be with just my concealed carry setup. And so we run drills with, I carry a Glock 19. I got a 507C Hollow Sun green dot on it. And I carry one extra magazine. And so we will start, we'll run drills there, and then he'll do some where he's like, hey, you're a pretty fit dude. You're a big guy. If a threat comes in and they see you, they're probably going to pop you just because you look like a guy that's going to have, you're going to be a threat to them, right? Or whatever they're trying to accomplish. So on this drill, you're going to start face down, like you woke up, you just got shot, your left arm's useless and it's in your back. And I'm left-handed, right? So he's like, you got to draw with your right arm from this position, engage the threat, do a reload, and then do it all safely, right? And so we do drills like that quite a bit, which I love because well, one, it's fun, but two, it's also like as close to real life as you can probably get.
It forces you out of the training scars, right?
Oh yeah, and I talked to actually I do some work with Stopbox USA. They're based out of Spokane Valley as well. And I was talking to the marketing team, my buddy Ricky there, and I was like, hey, we should do a video where because we just Evike, one of the airsoft companies, just sent Stopbox a whole bunch of training airsoft guns so that we could do videos, but also do dry fire training because they're pretty well one-to-one comparison with some of the airsoft guns they have now. And we got on a tangent and started watching some of the like cringy airsoft videos on YouTube, and I was like, man, we should do and some of them were very cringy, very cringy. But I was like, hey, we should do a video where we have some like a home invasion and somebody's just sitting on the couch, but the whole video back and forth is like the guy busts in and the guy on the couch is like, well, wait, like, pause, and then starts kitting up, like gets his belt out, right? Puts his belt on. I'll be ready for you in a minute. Puts the plate carry on, right? And then is all fully kitted out with the nods and the helmet and all that. And then says, actually, can you go back outside and come back in again now that I'm ready for you? I think it'd be hilarious because realistically, right? Like I have all the stuff. We have all the stuff. But unless something really kicks off, like, I don't know, we're having an actual invasion from a foreign army, you're not going to have time to get all your stuff on and go full, I don't know, full Navy SEAL on somebody when they're coming in, right? It's fun to have and train with, but it's not realistic, right?
I mean, I don't have my nods and my vest sitting next to my nightstand. I do have a tomahawk. I do have a tomahawk sitting there.
There you go.
In case I have to go Patriot on them or something.
Right, exactly. Well, I mean, that's the thing, right? Like it's, but a lot of people don't, because I have people all the time, well, why do you have all this stuff? I'm like, well, one, it's fun. It's fun to have the stuff, right? Like, but it is also for the in case. Like I have my everyday kit for if if somebody tries to engage me or hurt my kids or, go after my livelihood, I have the means to defend myself, which is my right. And then I also have at home, I have my whole, if the end of the world happens, I can at least maybe have a better chance than somebody by having armor and all that stuff. But,
have you had a chance to do any knife stuff yet?
No. So I need to.
I want you to look up a buddy of mine after this. You don't have to do it right now, but Spartan Mode.
Okay.
Hopefully he's got a class somewhere up there. I train with him almost every Monday.
Cool.
Totally fun stuff, dude. It's a ton of fun. And it's an eye opener because you realize how awful a knife attack would be.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I've watched videos for that. Like I've done some research on it. Like I have a background. I haven't done it in a long time. My son's now old enough that I'm thinking I'm going to try to get him into it. He's in karate right now. My background is in judo.
Oh, awesome.
So I want to get plugged back into that. It would be nice to maybe get into, doing some competing again, because I used to compete when I was younger, which was fun. And but hand-to-hand stuff, right, is important. Knife skills is important because, I mean, like I was watching a YouTube video of a guy. It was you've probably seen this scenario, but he was in a bar, just a guy in a bar hanging out. Some dude came up and just cut.
Yeah,
it was the least violent thing you've ever seen, right? As far as the actual motion of it, just walked up to the guy and boom, cut his artery. Right, the guy died in less than a couple minutes, and
it's surprising to see how little effort it takes with a knife.
Right,
and it's just a total different kind of attack that That yeah, I just don't want to ever be involved in one ever.
No, I don't. Yeah, it's one of my nightmares. And I mean, like knives. Still, I've been working with knives ever since I was a kid. Right, carving. I had a pocket knife when I was 6 years old. Started cutting up stuff, and I have some knives that still like they're so sharp they freak me out. like
a sharp knife is way less dangerous than a dull one.
Yeah, very true. Because they'll cut you and won't even realize it until you look down at your fingers on the floor and you're like, oh dang, like I just cut my finger off.
Yeah, I've got a Yojimbo, a Spyderco Yojimbo, and it's sharp.
Yeah, I've got. For a while, I was working as the in-house photographer and videographer for a third-party marketplace Amazon retailer called eTails. That was a mouthful. Wow. Rebranded as Caspian, but Buck Knives, who's a North Idaho company, right, was one of our clients, and so we had the benefit of having like a discount code where we could log in and buy direct wholesale on Buck Knives. So I mean, I've been a Buck Knives fan since I was a kid, so I was able to buy a whole bunch of really nice knives for very, very cheap. But it was funny because one of the knives I'd always been looking at was the Talon. It's like the most zombie looking knife you could probably think of, and but they were never in stock. Couldn't buy them, and they were like $200. So, and even on sale, like even with the discount, they were still expensive. Excuse me. And but I ended up doing a job with one of the marketing agencies. One of the agencies I was working with at the time was doing some work with a company called Unifier. It's in Spokane. They have their conglomerate. I forget what their tactical. They merged with a tactical company that does a lot of contract work. But Unifier does tungsten carbide chainsaw blades for firefighters, chainsaws and stuff. So we were doing some videos for them. It was very cool, right? Got to cut up a couple of pallets, sawing through nails with a chainsaw, no problem. No problem. Was cool. But the owner of the company, his name is Dan. I believe it's Dan Razakowski. He had designed the Talon in collaboration with Buck Knives, and then Buck Knives ended up stealing the whole thing and kind of pushed him out of the deal, which I thought was crazy. But he had a couple laying around, and I was like, yo, Dan, like if you love these videos, you should just hook us up with some of these knives. And so we did that. Videos were awesome, and then he hooked us up. Like I have one, it's in the safe. It's awesome.
That's rad.
Crazy cool knife. But I had it's cool because I got one of the ones that has the Unifier logo on it as well, which is it's kind of it's very few of those I think were made, so it's kind of collectible. So I haven't actually used it for anything, but it's cool. I like knives and guns and cameras. Those are my things.
So as a videographer, you mentioned, and we've talked otherwise too about you doing some stuff with Tulam, and so you get to travel a little bit. I think you said you were in Colorado the last time with Tulam. Is that correct?
Yeah, I get to travel a lot. I love traveling. And so I've been able to do some pretty cool projects with some pretty awesome people in the last couple of years, which has been it's what drives me. I mean, at my core, I'm a people person, right? Cameras just facilitate my ability to meet cool people and tell their stories. Yeah, it's kind of a crazy story. So, and again, this is a big kind of testament to how God moves in crazy ways. I had been working for Axis Manufacturing as their kind of marketing guy and their content creator for like a year at this point. And then I had one of the customers for Axis is a man named Matt Booth. And if you're into jewelry, boutique gin, or cigars, you might know this guy. He owns a company called Room 101. It's the Room 101 family of brands is what he calls it. So Room 101 jewelry, Room 101 cigars, Room 101 gin. And fun fact, Matt Booth, if you know Guy Fieri, the celebrity chef with the spiky hair, right? Matt Booth designs all of his chains and bracelets. So the big jewelry and stuff, that's all Matt Booth, which is kind of cool. Great guy. I'm trying to get Matt to work with me on some projects because I think it'd be awesome. His style would be so fun to shoot, and I think we'd collab. But we're buddies, and I know it'll happen at some point, but it hasn't really happened yet. But he had we've been teaming up with him on some gun projects. I was laser engraving some magazines for him, which was cool. And he was like, "Hey, Josh," he's like, "I want to shoot, I need a video shot and some headshots done. Can you shoot them for me in the Axis studio?" So I brought him in. We shot some stuff with him. Turned out awesome. Gave him the pictures, and that was all she wrote. Well, a couple months later, Matt calls me and he's like, "Hey, there's this magazine out of California that wants to have, feature me as the cover story for their first issue of their new magazine. And they want to use the pictures that you shot of me to promote the first issue." He's like, and Matt, he's such a stud. He was just like, "I told him that you kind of own the rights to those pictures, so I'm going to let you negotiate whatever your rate is for them in exchange to use the pictures." Right. I was like, awesome. So he put me in connection, hooked me up with the marketing director for this magazine, which you're going to laugh, was called ATF Lifestyle Magazine.
Nice.
Yes. And not to be like, I don't want to pick on these guys too much, right? Because I get where they were coming from the standpoint of wanting to, hey, we're pro these things, and we want to kind of flip the bird to the actual 3-letter agency by stealing their identity and making it pro alcohol, tobacco, firearms, right? Which I understand. Satirically, it is kind of funny. It's like, but it was too close. And I kind of told, like, anyway, I'll get into that in a minute. But so I'm talking to these guys and I say, hey, I'm like, this might be a good opportunity. I have a marketing background and a graphic design background. So I was like, hey, I'm probably not going to get more than a few $100 cash out of these guys if I ask for money, but I might be able to get a 1-page ad spread for Axis in their magazines for the first run. So for the first year. So I hit them back. I'm like, hey, in exchange for use of these pictures of Matt Booth, I want a 1-page ad spread for Axis Manufacturing in your magazines, which I think in their branding kit was like an $8,000 value. And I want, if you guys are coming to Spokane to shoot Matt, how about you do a story about Axis, right? Because we're a firearms manufacturer and your magazine's about guns and alcohol and tobacco, so why not? And they said yes. So awesome. We scheduled it out. We made the ads. I have one of them. I should grab the magazine. I'll show it to you. And I got their branding kit, and we were kind of going back and forth on when we could schedule it, but we ended up having them out. I think it was in May of 2021. And we did this, they interviewed Matt, they interviewed Justin, who's the owner of Axis Manufacturing. We went out to the range, shot a whole bunch of machine guns, and did a whole bunch of cool stuff with them, which was fun. And Matt Booth, he came out too and smoked cigars, and great time. Good dudes, right? Patrick is the owner of 526 Media Group, which is the company that owns, at the time, was called ATF Lifestyle Magazine. Great dude. He and I hit it off, and he's like, hey, like, do you want to come shoot some stuff for us? And I said, absolutely. It would be fun. And so that was like the very next trip that I ended up going with ATF Lifestyle Magazine was going down to Two Lamb's place in Colorado to shoot, because he was going to be the second issue cover story for the second issue of the magazine. Went down with the ATF crew and shot Two Lamb, got his stuff covered, and Two and I hit it off. And when we left there, I left Ruthie, Two's wife, I left her a business card and said, hey, if you guys ever need content, call me. I'd love to work with you. And Two and I connected over our love of Kung Fu, right? Because like I'm a big Jackie Chan, old school Kung Fu movie type guy. Like martial arts I love it, right? Love that kind of stuff. So he and I, kind of connected over that. So they ended up calling me a couple months later and asking me to come down and shoot some stuff with them in Dallas for Ronin, and ended up, spending a week with them in Dallas shooting one of their civilian training courses. Got a whole bunch of content for them, photo and video. And then the next trip I was down in Baton Rouge shooting with them as they trained a SWAT team. It was the counter narcotic SWAT team in Baton Rouge, shot with them, which was awesome. They took me down to Coronado, shot their experience at the Vets Gala down there. And then, yeah, it's been great. Been working with them off and on for the last year and a half now. Most recently was down in Colorado. Ronin Tactics had teamed up with the We Go Home supplements company that they rolled out it's called Double Dragon. It's a new pre-workout mix that is awesome. Got to shoot a bunch of promo content with Tu and Trung down in Colorado over a couple of days. So yeah, it's been awesome. That kind of stuff. Like I love that kind of stuff. It's kind of my style is like if you took old school Jackie Chan type kung fu, like way old, like before he came to the States, Project A, old school Jackie Chan, and Lord of the Rings, and you put those two together, that's kind of like my style of video making and photography. I like grungy, textury stuff with high contrast.
It's pretty interesting, like how one decision or one business proposition created a whole new connection that probably opened other doors for you too as well. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah, and that's kind of what that was what really got me into kind of the shooting for the defensive. I've always been a gun guy, right? Always been hunting. I've always loved guns, loved shooting guns, loved being in the woods. Like that's been my life since I was a kid, but never really thought of it as being an industry that I could support with video and photo until I had the opportunity to shoot for Axis, which even in of itself was a total fluke because I was working for a marketing agency at the time, shooting like car commercials and food shows for Fox locally for TV, right? Doing TV stuff. And then I had a guy reach out to me on Instagram and I had no followers, right? Still have very few followers. I don't care about social media. I don't get it. I suck at it.
Me too, brother. Me too.
So it's never been a priority for me, but I had like maybe 50 local people following me at the time. And this guy reached out to me and was like, hey, love your work. Would you want to like white label for another agency for this gun shop? And I was like, absolutely. That was easy. I was like, I would absolutely love to shoot content for a gun shop. And so again, it was the same thing. I'm a people person, right? I love working with people. So the biggest advantage you can have as a content creator or in any business, right? Carpenter or whatever, is being able to get along with people. Because it's about who you know, right?
Right.
Your work could be hot garbage for the most part, but if you're fun to work with or you're a good guy to be around, you'll still get calls. And so that was kind of always my goal. It's like, hey, if I can be a good guy to be around, if you're not having fun doing something, then it's not worth doing, right? So that's what got me in at Axis, and then Axis is what got me the opportunities with Matt Booth, and it really all just became about being the right guy in the right time and having a camera and being willing to be uncomfortable, right? Because that was the big thing when I started with cameras. At the start, with no experience, was having friends being like, hey, you bought a camera, have you ever shot engagement photos? And I'm like, no. I'm like, I will shoot. I will gladly try, as long as you understand I haven't done it before. And if they're bad, that's on you, not on me. Like, I'm just learning. So that's kind of how it ended up happening. I had a buddy that was in a band, and he was like, you want to shoot our band, like tour with us and our rock band all over the state for the summer and shoot our stuff? I'm like, sure, why not? Being a yes man will get you places, right? And being willing to be uncomfortable and take on new challenges is a big one, right? Same thing with TV. We had never shot a TV show before, and my boss at the agency I was at comes down and goes, hey, do you know anything about TV? And I'm like, yeah, I know some about TV from college. And he's like, do you think you could shoot a show? And I'm like, yeah, pretty sure we could shoot a show. It's like, okay, we have to shoot, edit, and turn over a pilot episode for a show in 10 days.
Wow.
So like, all right, I think we can do that. And we pulled it off, and we ended up running our first TV show that we shot for Fox was 13 episodes of a show called Community Positive during COVID. And we pulled this thing out of air, and between me and a handful of other guys, shot, edited, and made this show, which turned into 2 other shows over the next couple of years, which is kind of fun, but a lot of work. But
that's awesome.
Yeah, man, it's kind of wild. I never would have thought that, I still feel like I'm a baby in my career when it comes to filmmaking, but never would have thought that I'd be able to do some of the stuff I've done just because I, am good with the camera. So
It's funny that you say you're a baby, because I've watched your lives that you throw on Instagram, and you're rattling stuff about cameras and photography. It's all Greek to me, and you're like, oh, you got to use this, and then this, and then this, and I don't know what the hell you're talking about, but okay, I'll trust you.
Yeah, I'm a nerd when it comes to, I guess, you're not the first person to say that to me. I was talking to Patrick. We were talking about stuff down in Colorado during one of the, because Guy Fieri was supposed to be one of the covers of this magazine. Never worked out. It's been funny because I'm like, man, I'd love to meet Guy Fieri. I don't know why. It's just kind of like one of those guys. It seems like he'd be a cool dude to know. And between Matt Booth and the magazine, there was a couple of different times I was like, oh, maybe I'm going to get to shoot with Guy Fieri, and it's never worked out. So now he's kind of like the white whale of, the projects that I get to shoot when it comes down to working with cool people. I'm like, if I can get Guy Fieri, that'd be kind of tight. And I'll tell him that story, and he'll probably think I'm ridiculous or something. But yeah, it's I have I'm OCD a little bit, and cameras. Here's the thing: I believe that in being, and this is why I like kung fu and martial arts and gunplay and all that stuff, is it comes down to being a master of your craft, right? One of the things that's cool about the Asian culture in particular, it is taking the time to really study and know the nuances of the things that they make, whether it's a carpenter or a basket weaver or a rice grower or an artist or a musician or a swordsman or a samurai, all that stuff, right? A lifetime can be put into becoming the greatest at one thing. And I have a lot of respect for that. And so I've always tried to approach things with kind of this obsessive, like whether I'm at the hobby shop or I'm at, I'm embedded in a marketing team, or if I'm doing my own thing, I believe that I should know a business inside and out, right? So that I can become a master of whatever it is I'm doing at the time. And so cameras has been kind of that for me. So when it comes to building drones the same way, like building guns, like taking the time to research and work with the medium so that I know it inside and out. Like, and one of the things that's been awesome about being a kind of a run and gun filmmaker in the last 6 years has been understanding what I can capture with very limited tools, how far I can push the gear, right? And understanding that, like, for example, a lot of the grip stuff I use, almost everything uses either I think it's now I'm gonna look like an idiot. It's a quarter 20. I know quarter 20 is one of them. The other one is is it 1/8 or 3/8? There's two standard measurements for, like, there's two dimensions of screws. Quarter 20 is a smaller one, and the other one is the bigger one. But that's like across the board. Everything, it's either male or female in those two thread pitches. And so I can put together just about any piece of grip, whether it's like a C-clamp or a magic arm or whatever. When it comes to rigging something up, if it has one of those two parts, I can build you something that'll hold a camera and mount just about anywhere, right? With gaff tape and some balsa wood or a stick, like whatever it takes, I can rig up just about whatever to get a certain angle. And so it's understanding, like, again, going through these trips and traveling, putting together a kit of tools that I know I can give you. I can deliver a A+ level piece of video or piece of content on a smaller budget with very little equipment. And then understanding my camera settings and knowing my gear, right? Like, that's the thing. If I know my kit, I can shoot just about anything. And that's been true. And also composition and storytelling. That's the thing about content creators. That's why I hate that label, is because, look, if you have a phone and you can shoot a video, you're a content creator, right? But being a videographer is different. I hate being lumped into that bucket of content creator, because what I want to do is art, right? But it's got to be functional art.
Right.
And it's a tough thing to sell. It's really hard to sell. Like, I was talking to my wife, that's been the biggest battle for me right now, has been finding ways to market myself so that I can, one, pay my bills, feed my family, and progress in my career reasonably, but then compete with content creators but also educate brands in the differences, but then also educate with marketing. It's like, because it is valuable, but trying to justify that value to somebody when they're like, hey, my buddy down the road's got an iPhone, he's got 100,000 views on his videos, why would I pay you any kind of money when he said he'd do it for free? Right? Like, that's the battle. Like, that's the competition I'm in right now. That's been the struggle, is trying to figure out, how do I do this? Right? How do I do what I do and make money, but also satisfy people, right? Because it has to drive a metric, right? If you pay me $5,000 to make you a video, right? If it doesn't drive a metric for your business, it's a waste of $5,000, right? Content creators will come in and say, hey, I got 100,000 views, and they'll hit you with all these numbers. Influencers, they're the same way. They hit you with all these numbers and be like, I have 2 million people, blah, 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 that watch my stuff. And I'm like, yes, you have all that math and maybe it's true and all that data, but there's really what you don't have is the ability to guarantee that exposure is going to actually lead to conversions for the person in the business. How do you take 2 million views and turn it into dollars? Right.
Yeah. Quantify it.
Right. And that's for me. I come in with brands, and that's what I try to sell people when I sell videos. Like, look, I don't want to just come in and shoot you a cool video. Right. I want to team up with your brand and solve a problem for you with video, whether that be helping you sell more product, helping you find more capable, talented people to work for you, brand awareness, help you train people with training. Like, I want to be able to come in and help do something that is of value to the brand using my medium, because that's how I get paid. Right. That's what's going to make you want to call me back and say, hey, that first video actually did move the needle in this way for us. Let's do some more. Right. Versus trying to sell you on all this technical marketing mumbo jumbo. Because that's one thing about the gun market that people don't realize, is that really, right, gun companies don't need to, look, everybody wants to sell more product, but like, people are buying guns like crazy right now. Right. Most of if we had guns to sell at Axis, they'd be sold. A lot of the pain points in the defense industry is not trying to find ways to sell their product. It's like, it's a lot of the problems are supply chain issues, right? It's labor, finding capable people. It's, brand awareness. It's like all that, or training, right? If you do find somebody who's qualified, how can you quickly train them so you can put them to work, so you can actually solve your supply chain issues, so you can have inventory, so you can make the sales, right? That's where all the problems are. And that's where all the marketing education, like the consultation part of what I do, comes in, where it's like, hey, look, you got to understand that, I can't come up to a brand, even construction, right? I can't go into construction and be like, hey, I can help you sell more. And the guy's like, whoa, I don't need to sell more. I have other problems. So but that's the whole commercial side. And then there's the whole, trying to find time to do the narrative stuff that's just for entertainment, right? The only purpose of it is to entertain. So that's where, and the content kind of falls in that basket, right? YouTube, social media, that's kind of like in the entertainment space still, right? I don't know. It's a challenging thing. I'm a pretty good salesman. Working at the hobby shop for years, I know how to sell stuff, but video is still one that I just have not figured out how to.
It sounds like, though, it's selling yourself, because your drive, because obviously it started as a kid, that love for photography and videography started as a youngin', and that drive has what's feeding your family now. So obviously there's something there that you don't really have to sell. It sells itself.
Yeah. And that's one thing that I've kind of realized, like this year, last year, I tried some different things. I was trying to fire up the whole, like, understand and learn how to do the business, like email marketing and cold calling and cold emailing and all that kind of, and I suck at that, man. I'm just so bad at that. I don't have any motivation or drive to want to try to do that. And so,
well, in a way, I don't know about you, but if I tried, it makes me feel almost icky, right? Like, it's like, I don't want to be this used car salesman trying to sell you a beige Miata. I want to give value to my product and what I am.
Right. It's so impersonal, and Yeah, exactly. The car salesman thing is like, and I've always struggled with that. Even at the hobby shop, I told my boss one time, I was like, I'm not a salesman. He's like, you are a salesman. I was like, of course you are. And then I've learned, like I tell you, if I could give one piece of advice to any young person who wants to get a job, I'd be like, go find a hobby shop and work there for a couple of years, because you will learn so much about people and sale. Like I still to this day apply life lessons that I learned working at a hobby shop. And the biggest one is being able to find ways to connect with different people, right? Because that's the fun part for me. Like the whole, I hate coming in with offers and guarantees and blah, 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 like trying to do the door-to-door salesman thing, which is what makes me feel icky. What I do like is trying to like approach people almost psychologically and find out how to, because everyone's different.
Yeah.
Like there was a time at the hobby shop, I was back in the RC section, and I had to adopt a lingo and a body language and a posture that helped me connect better to a mechanic. Like he was a junkyard mechanic, right? Had to connect with that dude, which, you know, I grew up in a logging town. It was pretty easy, right? But everything was different. And then at the other, like just kitty corner around, like to the other counter, I had a heart surgeon from Sacred Heart who was into airplanes and helicopters. And so I'm going back and forth between these two guys, selling them on different products, but they speak different languages, right? And so I'm going from this guy over here and I'm talking one way and I'm doing, you know, gesturing one way and selling him on this RC truck. And then I go over to the doctor and I'm like, you know, what would you like today? And everything changes up so that I can kind of unpack them and then figure out how I can help them, which would, you know, what helicopter would be best for this guy or what RC car would be best for that guy. And that's fun, man. That's video's the same way. It's almost like you're coming in and you have to find out, hey, like, what's your style? You know, what's the voice of your brand? How can I change what I do to create content that chameleons into fitting with your brand, and how can we do that together? It's a puzzle and it's fun.
That's awesome.
But yeah, content though, video right now is a commodity. It's hard to find a way to sell something in a commoditized market. And there's a lot of frustrated and very apprehensive brands because they've been burnt by people who have come in with the guarantees and the sales pitches, especially in the we in the defense industry and the two-way community are skeptical and cautious by nature, right? And so take that on top of having a small brand that's maybe been burnt by some, like an SEO specialist, or a marketing specialist, or somebody that's basically rolled in and said, I can guarantee X and Y sales. And I'm like, you obviously don't understand anything about the two-way industry and haven't done research, because if you did, you would know that zero of the things that everybody else gets to use on social media gets to be used by this community. Yeah. And so you can't make those guarantees, right? Because 9 out of 10 ads run by a gun company with any kind of ad spend gets rejected because of violates community guidelines and stuff. So,
well, and sometimes those community standards, they just depends on what time of the day or who's looking at it or what AI version is looking at it. Because I've had some of my content, which I know is not quite the same as your content, but yeah, two exact same. Almost exact same videos, very little difference between the two. One of them was totally cool to post. The other one flagged immediately, and I actually got a strike on my TikTok account. I got a strike, and they were pissed, but they let me do the same video like 2 days earlier with no issues whatsoever. So I was like, what the heck?
Yeah,
it's pretty frustrating.
Yeah, I've had to be careful with Instagram because, well, any of the applications,
yeah.
Right? Because that's partly why I avoided it. I actually last year I kind of had this epiphany. I was getting so stressed out about it that I was just like, I got to take some time off. So I deleted everything. I clean slated the whole thing, every app off my phone, shut down all my other accounts, everything I was running. I took like 3 months off of anything related to social media at all. Yeah. Did a fast, did a week-long food fast, just like purged my system of all of the stuff that was causing me anxiety, and then started to try to come back at it with a different approach. I would recommend doing that to anybody. If you're feeling stressed out by social media, just turn it off. because my whole thing was like, it was the feeling that if I'm not growing on social media, then my business isn't going to grow. Like the two it felt like they were symbiotic, right? And I had to shut it all down. I was actually talking to a guy, I reached out to a mutual friend through Ronin Tactics, who shoots a lot of the photography for Call of Duty. I reached out to him, and he doesn't run social media at all. It's just all website. I was like, hey, out of curiosity, have you had any negative impact on your ability to get work by not having social media? And he was like, dude, he's like, I've not had it for a couple of years now, and I've had no issues with getting new work. And so I was like, all right, I'm going to shut it all down and we'll try it. So I shut it all down, and I was just watching to see if it made any difference at all in my ability to get new work or get notoriety. And honestly, it didn't. Nothing happened, right? Turned it all off. Nothing happened. Nobody even noticed I was gone, which was I was like, okay, well, I guess it really doesn't matter at all whether you have it or don't. And so when I came back and started trying to make an effort at it again, limited it to pretty much Instagram, and then just kind of was like, you know what, I'm going to post what I want. Cause I had not been posting a lot of the work I've been doing in the gun space before. I had not been doing the live streams. I was self-censoring myself because of the stress of like, in my head, I thought that, if I identify, which again, this all sounds so dumb, right? It sounds so dumb. I can't even believe I'm saying this, but it's like, if I identify as a conservative white male who is pro-gun, pro-freedom, pro all of these things, if I do that in my industry, which is media, right, then I will not be able to work, right? Nobody in Spokane who is even a little teeny tiny bit woke will want to hire me. Like, it just won't. Yeah, I'll basically be awesome. Like, that was my frame of mind. And so I took the time off, and I was like, one, nobody cares, right? Two, if that is something that they don't like, right, enough about who I am to not hire me, then I don't really want to work with them anyway, right? I don't want to be that. I wouldn't want them as a client anyway. So cleared my head, came back at it, fired it back up, and just started being like, hey, I got some cool stuff that I've been sitting on for years. I'm going to start putting that up on Instagram, and I'm going to start, like, putting all the gun stuff and the knife stuff I've shot, and all the outdoor stuff I've shot, and all the stuff that I care about, my some of the nonprofit Christian based companies I work with, all the stuff. I'm going to start putting it up there, and if I get canceled, I get canceled, and I don't care. And it was very freeing, and it's been awesome. And I'm now just kind of like rolling with that, and it's been fun. I do put some ad spend behind some of my posts just to see, because the reality about Instagram is, if you will not get any zero organic growth on any of the platforms anymore. It's just a reality.
Yeah.
So a lot of the growth I've had has just been basically budgeting, maybe $100 a month to boosting certain things, or trying to boost, because a lot of it gets rejected, just to see if I can get, grow a following, because there is some validation. I kind of learned going to SHOT Show the last couple of years that when I get down there, if I'm talking to a marketing director and they pull up my Instagram and I have like 50 followers, and then a guy behind me shows up and goes, I'm doing the same thing, but he's got 11,000. Like, they're going to go, like, it does make a difference to have some. So, investing.
Yeah, that's just the nature of the beast right now, huh?
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's kind of like, if you don't have, like, and that's partly why I thought about shutting down and having, as a media guy, having no presence on social media would be an advantage, is that it's not a unit of measure by which they can choose against you, right? My portfolio, I feel like my work, not to sound arrogant, is good work and can stand up against just about anybody out there as far as quality and production value goes. But there's a lot of talented creators, a lot of talented guys with cameras right now, especially in the 2A community. And so if you go up against them, if you're in a stack of applications or you have, like, I've submitted my request for work and they like, or whatever, my pitch deck, and they're looking apples to apples to try to make a decision. And this guy has 11,000 followers and this guy has 3,000 followers. They're going to pick the guy with 11,000, right? But if you don't have Instagram, period, if they're like, hey, he doesn't have, it's not that he has no followers, he doesn't even have an Instagram, right? Then they have to like kind of throw that out as a way to compare, to choose. They have to actually look at the work, right? And say, well, is this guy's portfolio and his personality portrayed through his website better than this guy's Instagram follow? Like, and that, so it kind of like, that was, to me, it is an advantage to not have anything.
Right.
I still think about that sometimes, where it's like, hey, I've got, now we just hit the 3,000 followers mark on Instagram, which is kind of cool. But it also is like, it's still not enough, which, again, for this reason, I hate social media. It's the dumbest thing ever, because it means nothing. It means nothing.
Yeah, it's so superficial.
It's nice to have, like, sure, I have 3,000 followers, blah, 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 but like, it means nothing, right? That can go away as easily as, I could make a post tomorrow and Instagram can go in and be like, I don't care that you've paid us X amount of dollars in ad spend over the last couple of years. Your account's going to get deleted. And then you're right back to square one. And so it means absolutely nothing. It's just a number. It is nice to have some kind of validation, right? If you want to get your ego stroked, having a big number of followers on Instagram is good, I guess. But when it comes down to actually like getting leads or furthering my career, it has done not a lot, right?
Well, and so, like for me, like, I don't pay for any kind of ad space or nothing. Yeah. And because of that, like, I've been doing the show since 2018. I mean, no money, like, it's not monetized whatsoever, which sucks because I've been doing it a long time. I should be making some money by now, right? It's whatever, 6 years or whatever it is now. So I decided this year I was going to hit it hard. I was going to, make a grind out of it, not just a hobby. And so I've been pushing for affiliates. Mm-hmm. And I've got some affiliates. They haven't really made me any money, which is fine. I've just started doing it. But some of the bigger companies say, hey, well, we're happy to support the little guy. I've reached out to them and they're like, oh, your accounts don't, they're not big enough. We're not going to work with you. I'm like, you said you'd help the little guy, but here you are not helping the little guy. So, I mean, it is what it is. They like to look at obviously their job is to make money. They want their brands to make money. So they want to get in front of more people, but still, it would be nice to actually put your money where your mouth is.
Yeah. And the thing about, I was just thinking about this the other day, because marketing is big, it's, marketing is it sucks. It sucks so much because in theory, it's fun. Everybody wants to be in marketing, right? It's like it's the Hallmark job title in the Hallmark movies, right? Every Hallmark movie is the same, right? They have, the single parent with a kid. It's either a dad with a kid or a mom with a kid. And then they meet this, and usually one of them is an artist or a graphic designer or a marketer of some kind. And the other one is like, a doctor or some kind of more put together. So they always build this ideal story. And it's the same story over and over and over again, and we just eat it up, right? It's the romantic, creative artist type that for whatever reason people want to be that. Like, marketing sounds like it's the cool thing to be, but as an industry, it sucks because it is so it's all so tied down to like this idea of influencer marketing, right? Like, I've watched it kind of come and now go when it comes down to, if you have 50,000 followers, again, a business will look at it and be like, oh my gosh, like, they got 50,000 followers. That means, like, if I give them, I send them a product and they use it in some of their posts, maybe I pay them a little money or I trade them the product, that it's going to lead to conversions. And it's like, there's really, like, it really doesn't.
Yeah.
Right. And so and because most of people have now kind of cued into the fact that, hey, like, it's, it's not genuinely a good product. They're getting paid to represent it. So it means it's probably a hoax or whatever. So people are harder to sell to now. but it's still kind of it is still this mentality of like, you know what, the little guys with smaller following will probably actually have a higher conversion rate than the 50K plus guys, because they're
It's more
still
personal.
they're still the new guys. Like, why would they be sponsored and be representing something they didn't actually believe in?
And what was frustrating is like these were companies that I've purchased from,
Mm-hmm.
like I have a relationship with, and yeah, I was just like, dude, seriously, you
But
guys
it
aren't
is
that
it's
important.
you know, the whole thing, it kind of killed social media, killed really traditional marketing, because um of the free work, right? The free stuff, everything's for trade. It's kind of like, hey, like I got 50,000 followers and they're making, you know, maybe they have a big YouTube channel, so they're getting paid subsidies for the amount of views they have,
Right.
or however YouTube's algorithm works. And then they're like, hey, like I like your product, just send me whatever and I'll give you a whole bunch of good content for free. Same with like I've done it, right, where I've taken, you know, I got all kinds of guns and all kinds of stuff I buy for personal use, and I've taken great pictures of them, and I'll tag EOTech, or I'll tag HoloSun, or I'll tag, you know, the manufacturer, and they'll repost and they'll use it to promote their page, and they'll give me a little tag, and they'll be like, hey, if, you know, photo shot by, but nobody reads that. Nobody cares. I don't get paid. I didn't get any free stuff. They got a great photo for free.
Yeah.
And so the whole idea of being able to, you know, monetize marketing in a way that's like effective for a brand, especially a small brand, like influencer marketing is not going to get you a lot of sales,
Yeah.
right? Social media marketing is not going to get you a lot of sales, unless you have like lots of money to put behind like huge ad spend budgets, right? Like there's a couple companies I've worked for that have had monthly ad spend budgets of, you know, $250,000 to $500,000 a month, right? That's spread across Facebook, Instagram, Google, like the works, and it's all mathematical, and they got it all figured out, and they're able to make their return on ad spend is anywhere in the 2.5 to 4 points, which means, you know, for every dollar they spend, they're making $2 back or $4 back in sales, and then they drive that machine. But unless you have that kind of money up front to start driving that for your business, and you fall into a category that's not censored or throttled, right?
Right.
You're not gonna, and again, have the supply chain to be able to back up those sales. You know, it's not gonna, I don't know. It's just such a lame, I don't know, industry. It's fun.
You
I
know,
mean, you get to be creative, but it's not like, I don't know.
this conversation makes me think of a question.
Oh,
Do you think there's something that you could do as a creator, or we could do as a firearms community to be more creative, to get our love for the firearms community out there?
oh, sure. I think that as a community, if it stopped, you know, if we stopped being so competitive with each other, which I know it's like it's an impossible ask, right? Because I mean, look at what these big corporations are doing, right? The Targets, the Walmarts, all the big box stores, like to us, the little people, we see them as like, hey, well, Walmart's in direct competition with Target, and you know, I'm going to choose Walmart because of loyalty or whatever. Like we tend to be loyal with where we spend our money, right? But really, all of these companies are owned by like two big companies, and so, you know, either way, they're still making money. And so I guess in the 2A community, the small business, the middle class type, smaller corporations, if there was more of a spirit of collaboration, right? Where how can we team up on content? How can we team up on, you know, a unified message? Being able to work more collaboratively, I think, would be a great way that we could kind of gain ground a little bit. The question I have, and here was my thought, because I was brainstorming this the other day, because it's what I do these kind of things for fun. I think a lot of guys that like to think, are free thinkers, like to try to solve the world's problems for fun, right? One of them was like, okay, how do we like remember back when phones were like they weren't like this, and it wasn't apps. Like, back when app developers were like an actual career you could have, where you could make a fortune because you designed words with friends or whatever. You wrote the code, you made the app, you put it on a platform, people bought it, and you got rich. Right? Instagram was new, Facebook was new, MySpace. There was new apps for connecting and new apps for this or that or whatever. Like, seemed like every day there was the new big app. And then all of a sudden that stopped, right? And now we've been sitting on Instagram and Facebook and YouTube for years with no new no competitors to that platform, right?
Right.
Everybody whines and complains about, we can't advertise, we're getting censored, blah, blah, blah. There's no, Instagram's controlling everything and whatever. And I'm like, well, where are all the app guys? Why don't we have, where's the 2A guy that knows how to code, that makes an app that's just for 2A community to have pictures, video, and branding? Why is that not happening? Right? But then you think about, well, what happened with that application that they shut down, like all the way up to the ISPs.
Right.
Back, I think it was back when in 2020 during the election time, or what was that app even called? Well, I forget.
Yeah, I think it was during the election. Trump or somebody was involved with it, and they're like, "Oh no, this isn't going anywhere. Let's shut her down." I don't remember what it's called anymore. Gosh.
Yeah, but there was I can think of somebody was like, "Hey, we got the app where you can you can post whatever you want, you can say whatever you want, and freedom of speech."
Was it Getter? No, it couldn't.
No, it was something else.
Anyway, yeah, they had something, and they couldn't get the iOS or whatever this.
Right. It was like, okay, well, the Apple App Store was like, we're not going to let you on the App Store. And then the Google Place or whatever the Google Store was, they're like, or the Android Store, we're not going to let you on the Android Store. And then all of a sudden it was like the freaking internet was like, you're not allowed on the internet. You can't even have a website. And I was like, whoa. I'm like, so you're telling me that if we even wanted to make an application that was our own application, that was like Instagram for people who wanted to have access to free speech and all that stuff, like if we wanted to even make that, you're telling me that you would not allow it on the internet as an ISP? Like Google, the search browser would say you can't even search for the URL, like you can't have that. Like and I was like, dang, are we so, and at that point I was like, dang, we might be SOL at this point when it comes to alternatives, right? Because that would be one area I'm like, hey, if they're not letting us advertise, why not create a platform where we can? Well, we can't even do that, right? Because either they'll find a way to bankrupt you or shut you down or buy you out or bury you in litigation and lawsuits. They'll find some way to, Me Too you or something into not existing, right? Just to force people onto their platforms. And I think that's one of the things that we don't realize. Working for the marketing team inside of an e-commerce company was a very eye-opening experience when it comes to just how heavily manipulated we are by the media that we see, right? Like we think, this is a great example of people not realizing, this would be kind of a fun tangent to go on, is your data, your information, and how much of it is utilized without you. Yeah,
all of it.
you sign the thing when you download the app, and you don't read the fine print.
Yeah, there's 800 pages. Just click and agree.
Well, and a lifetime. Think about the kids being born today. Like those of us that were, I'm only 35, but I was, I came into existence pre-major internet, pre-social media, pre all this stuff, right? Grew up without it, learned how to use it. Mm-hmm. Smartphones, they were dumb and then they were smart. We have the benefit of existing before. Like there's parts and information about me that is not on the internet because I existed before. But the kids and the people that are being born post 2000, right?
Their life history is recorded.
Their entire life is in data somewhere, right? And you want to talk about being able to control a population through information. And I'm not like, I was on this this brainstorming kick the other day of quantum computing and AI and all this stuff, right? Because everybody in marketing is all about the AI right now. AI is the big thing. AI copywriting, AI images, AI video. I met with my old boss at the marketing agency. We had lunch, and he's like, "Look, bro," he's like, "if you don't start using AI, you're going to get left behind, because you better learn how to use it and make it work for you, or you're going to get beat." And so I started looking into, because I'm anti-AI, have been for a long time. But
I've seen Terminator.
Oh yeah, right. Skynet, all that. It's legit. But I was thinking about quantum computers and why it is important, especially in tandem with AI technology, because, like, look, people like to think that they're unpredictable and that the human mind or the human life has the ability to think freely and operates independently. We like to think that we're not being controlled and we have freedom. But if you look at, you remember those books that they used to print where you could you would read a few pages and then
choose your own adventure?
It would give you a question. Yep. Like, you choose this way or choose that way. If you choose this, then turn to page 14 and pick up your story from there. Remember those? That is times 10. Your entire life is broken up into like 50-50 choices. Sorry, my camera just went out of focus. Yes. My wife just got home. So yeah, still in the podcast. Sorry, just a sec.
Well, you're good.
But if you have a quantum computer capable of running the algorithm, you could basically say that a person's entire life from beginning to end can be predicted based off of, as they grow and develop. You start to learn their preferences and their personal taste based off of their choices that you get from their cell phone data, right? Hey, they like blue, they don't like green, they like to eat Chinese food, they don't like burgers, they like to hunt, they don't like to fish. You have all of this information that you're able to gather for free on every person, and you can put that into an algorithm. You could pretty much get to a point where you could accurately, like the weather, predict a person's tendencies and manipulate them onto a path you want them with very little effort. Like, it is not so impossible to think that can't happen, right?
Well, I wouldn't be surprised if it has been happening for years.
We're creatures of habit, right?
Yeah.
And you want to talk about, that's why now, like, when you go onto your Instagram or whatever application you like to frequent, or wherever Google search you like to look at, you're just getting hit with ads that they're like, hey, we know Josh likes to fish, we know Josh likes to hunt, so we're just going to hit him with, and lately we've heard him say that he's thinking about hunting again, and we've seen that he's maybe done some research or maybe a Google search for what's Matthews got coming out in the new compound bow range, and then all of a sudden all you see is ads for hunting,
that kind of content.
Blah, blah, blah. But then
I've been talking about how I'm going to win the lottery, but that hasn't happened either, though.
Yeah, well, is it really up to chance, or is it?
No.
There's a conspiracy theory about that.
Not up to me at all. I won't ever get it.
But here's the thing, right? And it makes you sound crazy, but it's like, look, man, like that is what is happening now, right? It's happening now. They have the data. You're being tracked everywhere you go. Your geographic data is being tracked. What you buy online is being tracked. Everything is digital. Everything is data, and all that data is being used to control you. I mean, like, you remember the radio story, or that back in the day there was a radio show that they did a theatrical piece on an alien invasion.
Yeah, War of the Worlds.
War of the Worlds, right? And everybody thought it was real, and that was that actually happened, right?
People were freaking out.
People were losing their minds. You imagine if they did that today with AI video and not being like, they could show you whatever you wanted.
Yeah.
It could be going all over the phone. They could say China's invading, and they could show you realistic looking footage of there being an invasion. And the next thing you know, everybody's going to war over a fake enemy.
Well, and as a Christian, like, you think about the end of days and the Antichrist and how he'll, people think he's creating miracles. And I mean, that's,
well, and hey, man, look, during COVID, I was telling my wife this because we were watching the news. We don't watch the news anymore. We don't watch anything on TV unless we stream like a show. because I told my wife, I'm like, look, I'm a guy that makes the stuff, and I can tell you how easy it is to be made, right? I mean, the stuff I have at my disposal software wise, as just a nobody guy in a basement with a small production company, what I can do with VFX and some my cameras in a very little time, you can make anybody think anything you want, right?
Yeah.
And if you're going to, the news, and I tell people who religiously watch the news, I'm like, look, it's not news, it's entertainment, right? Their
An
ratings,
opinion.
right?
Yeah.
It's a biased entertainment that is, their ratings, they depend on ratings. They make money through marketing just like anybody else. Because how does the news make money? They only make money if you watch their network, man. And that's how they make money through ad placement. So they want you to watch their stuff. Well, if the news is all good and honky-dory and not exciting, then you're not going to watch the news. So
Yeah.
it becomes about entertaining you and freaking you out through scare tactics, just so they can make their money.
Because fear is a great motivator.
Oh, yeah. So during the whole COVID thing, and it runs in loops, right? Like it's like 15 minutes, and then they repeat, and then they show the same footage. They never show new footage, and all the footage is always super vague because it's non-existent. So it's, it's a lot of, the whole fake news thing that Trump was saying. It's like, it's legit. Like, it is fake, right? He's not wrong. There is not, I don't think, any real journalism that's happening anymore, unless it's done by like the YouTubers that are out there.
Yeah.
Like, I got nothing to lose. I'm right here, and it's happening right there. So yeah, it's nuts, man. That kind of stuff. It's I struggle a little bit with my chosen profession, because I'm like, am I just not feeding the machine, right? By kind of perpetuating the whole content creation thing in the video. But that's why I kind of made the decision a couple of years ago, and after taking that time off from social media, where I was like, you know what, I'm going to commit to being a truth speaker, right? I'm going to work with brands who want to honestly sell their product, not do any, smoke and mirrors type stuff. I want to tell stories that are from an actual non-biased perspective of a historical accurate account of this person's life from their mouth. I don't want to, I want to be, because that's important to have that kind of stuff out there.
Yeah.
And so I try to do that now. I try to be a little picky and choosy with who I choose to work with. It's tough because a lot of times, I feel like, sometimes we don't have two pennies to rub together. But I would rather be a man of integrity and honesty in my work than have boatloads of cash. So
yeah, I appreciate that. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I've kept you on here for like an hour and 40 minutes, my man.
Nice. It's been a good time.
I hope I'm not keeping you from doing making money and things.
No, it's been actually, honestly, it's been kind of a nice break today. I've been doing one of the things I try to do to bless my family is help with anytime we have a death in the family. I like to offer to do the memorial video. And so recently my aunt passed away a couple weeks ago. My grandma died last week. And so today I was working on memorials. So it's nice to, take a break from that. But so yeah. No
understandable. Worries. I got to ask you, shifting gears a little bit. 1156. Where did you get that name?
Yeah. So, fun family story. So, I'm a family person. Family is important. When my dad and my uncles were kids, my grandpa took them and sat them down on the bench in Vernon, British Columbia, just northwest of Kelowna, and said, wait here, boys. I'm going to go on my run. So he went off on his run, came back, grabbed my dad and my two uncles and said, all right, boys, never on your life forget the number 1156, right? And so they're like, all right, Dad, we will never forget. And so they went on with their lives, and fast forward, they're married. We exist. The next generation exists. And they're all like, all right, kids, never forget 1156. It's in emails. It's in PIN number. It's in passwords. It's in like everything across the best family. 1156. Every time the clock reads 1156, like I'd be driving with my dad or my uncle, and it'd be like 11:56. My uncle's like, hey, it's 11:56. Or my dad would be like, it's 11:56. So it's this, that, and everything. It's 11:56. And one day we're like, hey, why are we remembering 11:56? And at that point it had been like tattooed, right? And it's been everywhere, right? My grandpa was like, yeah, so I just wanted to, because at the time they didn't have Garmin's or anything that could track your steps. He's like, I just wanted to remember how many strides he counted his strides when he was running, so that when he got back, he could do the math and figure out what his distance in kilometers was around the city park. So when he went and did the jog, he could track it. That was it. But it had become this like thing.
So it was 11:56 steps.
1,156 of my grandfather's strides around the city park limits.
That's awesome.
Don't even know how many kilometers it was. But at that point, we had all adopted it. It'd become like best family lore. And I had always said that if I'm going to start a company, I'm going to try to find a way to include that. So I added the colon because it seemed like towards the end or part of it, the current part of it just seems to be more connected to when we're together as a family. Things happen at 11:56 a.m. or p.m. And so it actually works out kind of good for my marketing, because I try to, if I'm on a shoot and I notice it's 11:56, I'll take a picture of the watch with whatever I'm doing at that time. If I'm traveling or flying or shooting or whatever, I'm like, hey, it's 11:56. So one of my goals is, maybe if I can get my brand awareness high enough, is that whenever the clock turns 11:56, people will be like, hey, I wonder what Josh is doing. One guy thought it was clever. I did not think about this, but one of the guys reached out to me. I was like, hey, it's clever that, you're working up to the nth hour on video. Like, he thought it was about like, we're working until right before midnight to get your stuff to you. I was like, that's clever, but if I was going to do that, it would have been like 11:59 or something, but I don't know. That's the story.
That's funny.
I tried to, what was it? I tried to kind of make it, I get asked that so many times. I was trying to think of a kind of a curt, like witty way of telling a real fast story, or like hyping it up, because my last name is Best. So I was like, hey, it'll be the best story you ever hear. Right. And then going into this story. So it's not the best story you'll hear. It's actually kind of a pretty anticlimactic story, but because it's about the best, it is by nature the best story. So
what you should do is film like this really dramatic short story that, shows an alarm clock or something, and then the story ends at 11:56, and say, I'm living the rest of the story.
Actually, so funny story. When I first started my branding, I'm going to pull into this goodie bag I'm giving away here. I have it sitting up here on my my trophy shelf, but it's buried in other things. So if I try to grab it, it won't. It'll probably spill all over the place. Let's see, guys. So I went out and I bought. I spent probably too much money to try to get one of these clocks. Like the old
sticker, is that what it is?
This is a sticker I took a picture of the clock that I have up here set to 11:56, and then turned that picture into a sticker. This was my original like brand logo, was the digital clock with 11:56. So I have that. I could do that video. I thought about my whole plan was to be like cool social media guy back I started this in 2020. Actually, no, that logo came before that. I was in college when I designed that, because I was like, this is what it would be. But my plan was to pack that stupid clock with me everywhere I went, like backpacking, and then stage it in places and take pictures of it. And then I bought the clock, and I was like, I really don't want to carry this around everywhere, like a weirdo. So now I just have, there it is. There's the clock.
That's funny.
But it is funny. Yeah. Yeah, there it is.
Right on. Still a good story.
Yeah, it's pretty fun. I mean, it's it's important, right? Like that kind of stuff's important. Having, a tie back to family, it's always good. But
because the nice thing is it always makes you recollect the story of your grandpa and your dad and your uncle.
Yeah,
and it's something I'm sure you shared with your children.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. My kids, they're all about it. they're
That's
also
rad.
all about it. And it'll be tough because my grandpa's not doing well. He's got dementia, and he's probably going to be gone here this year. So that'll be a memorial. That's not fun to another memorial video I'll have to do, but a lot of good memories connected to 1156. So it will definitely live on.
Yeah, it sucks losing a family member. My dad passed away last year. That was
sorry.
That was tough, man. That was the hardest thing I've had to deal with so far, and I believe we get to see each other again. So I look forward to that meeting again. So
yeah,
it keeps me going.
Yeah, I agree. It's, we're kind of in that stage in life. We've been blessed in my family we've been very blessed with a shocking lack of tragic stories with us. So we've had a lot of people around for a long time, which has been awesome. But we're now in that stage of life where the old generation is passing away and the next generation is kind of advancing into that place. And so, yeah, it'll be, my grandpa was a tough one. I do believe he was saved, got saved, met Christ way later in life, like just recently, which is cool. But he was a pretty stubborn dude for a long time. But I learned a lot from him. One of the regrets I had is for my thesis project in college, I got a fine arts degree, and for my degree, I had to do a thesis, and it was based on a generational influence. Because at the time I had the opportunity, my son was on the way, and I had, for my son on both sides of his family, he had access to multiple generations all the way out to his great grandfather still alive. And so I was trying to do an artistic kind of commentary on the things that are passed down between generations and then kind of handed off as inheritance to the next generation of men. And so I did packed gear and went and interviewed all these different guys and asked them a series of questions about what they thought it meant to be a man, what things were important, what they were passed down from their fathers, etc., and what they would tell to future generations. And so I went up and I got about an hour and a half, almost 2 hours of interview footage from my grandpa while he was still mostly put together mentally before the dementia kicked in, about some of that stuff. And I was watching it back recently, and I'm like, the one thing I'm kicking myself for is like not taking the time while I had him there to ask more questions about, who he was and who his dad was. Because my great grandfather was, pretty crazy story. Was Canadian, was Irish, immigrated to Canada, and then fought for the Canadians during the First World War. Got gassed by the Germans, survived barely. It was like one of a handful of dudes that survived out of his unit.
Wow.
From that gas attack. Made it back to Canada, met my great grandmother on the whole nurse soldier story. She was from England. They moved back to Canada, had my grandpa, and that because of that, that's how close I was to not existing, was the mustard gas, all crazy stuff. That's all story that I wish I could have captured.
Yeah.
Out of his mouth. But
and that's, we talked about it. You did a live, and I remember mentioning about my other podcast that only has one episode, unfortunately, just because I haven't had time to dedicate it to, is the Everyday Heroes. And for that very reason that's why I started the podcast. Is my first interview was my dad, and it was tough because it was after his stroke, so it was really hard to hear him, and it was hard for him to communicate, really, which sucked. I wish I would have done it way sooner. So just be happy that you got what you did get, because it's a treasure, my friend. It's something that's incredibly valuable.
I'm stoked I have it. I'm thankful that there's what's the channel because a couple years ago I was thinking about creating a YouTube channel that did the same thing, right? Finding veterans, old dudes, and having them tell their stories, right? Seeing if they're willing, and then get their accounts on camera, because there's so many, again, of those guys, that generation of World War II vets that are all they're passing away, right?
Yeah.
And then next it'll be the Korean War guys, and then after that it'll be the Vietnam War guys. And so it's but there is a YouTube channel, I forget what is it, that is doing that. Actually kind of started doing it when I was thinking about it, and then they've taken off now, and they're doing tons of them. And so I'm stoked that they're doing it, because I was like, all right, somebody's got to do it.
Yeah. I've got a neighbor that who's got an incredible story about Vietnam. He shared some of it with me, and man, it is epic. And I have got to get him sat down. I mean, it could fill hours and hours and hours of stuff. He is such a stud. His life story is just absolutely nuts.
Man, I had the chance to, when I was traveling with the magazine, I had a chance to, I was down in South Georgia, and probably to this day, still one of the coolest interviews I've ever shot. And I got to go back and redo it, because there's a lot of it that hasn't been put out. But I had a chance to fly down to South Georgia and meet with Norm Hooten and Tim Young. They own Hooten and Young cigars and whiskey. Norm Hooten is Hoot from Black Hawk Down, the Mogadishu Story, the movie. Eric Bana was the character that played this guy. So I got to meet the real guy, which is way cooler.
Damn.
He's awesome. We spent, it was like out of a movie, man. Like we flew in from Spokane into Atlanta, rented a car, drove from Atlanta like 6 hours all the way down to just north of Florida. And we got to the plantation. It was a cotton plantation. And we arrived at like 9 o'clock at night. It's dark and it's raining. And we go into this farmhouse thing, and there's this big back deck, and it's all closed in. And we come around, and there's like a circle of dudes, and they're all smoking cigars, and they're all drinking whiskey. And every single one of those guys is either retired Delta Force, retired Navy SEAL, retired CIA, or some sort of a government contractor. Like every single one of them. And they're all just hanging out. And we come in, and I have a camera, and I'm sitting down, and we're all like, the thing that's awesome about working with a lot of operators, tier 1 guys, is most of those dudes are the most down to earth, like relatable guys you could probably meet. Like from my background growing up as a, blue collar logging town, like hunter, fisher, conservative dude, like I get along with those guys so well because we have so much in common, right? And so you walk in and you sit down, you hit it off, and you light up a cigar and you start drinking some whiskey, and all of a sudden it's like you're hanging out. And then a few minutes later, like once you've kind of put off the vibe that you're not like, a weak woke dude, right? You kind of get accepted into the group, and then the stories start happening, right? And man, I heard some stories. Like there was one point that I was rolling, and I was like, I don't know if I should be recording this. And then I look over at one of the CIA guys, and he's just like, turn this off. So I turned it off, deleted the file. I have a recording of the account, like from that night of the Black Hawk Down story, and then I have the next day where Norm tells the Black Hawk Down story. And so very cool. Being able to hang out with those dudes and hear their stories out of the mouth. I mean, to be able to hear a story like that out of the mouth of the guy that was there, you just can't, there's nothing you can compare that to. A firsthand account is priceless. Right. And so, that'd be crazy. Yeah. One of the coolest trips ever. And then we spent the next day with them. We were supposed to shoot, but it was too rainy. So the guys didn't want to go out and shoot, but neat. It was funny because then I ended up sitting there and I'm talking cameras with one of the SEALs, and he's like, "Hey, what camera you got there?" And I'm like, "Oh, it's a Sony." He's like, "Hey, we use those in the team. Like that's what we used in the teams for reconnaissance." And we started talking lens and camera settings and all this stuff, and I'm like, "Man,
that's crazy."
Yeah, it's pretty wild.
The closest experience I ever had to something like that, I had a chance to meet Chris Peranto from 13 Hours.
Cool.
When we opened the range here in Idaho Falls, not long after it was right when his book came out. Mm-hmm. Somehow we got him talked into coming, hanging out to the range and selling his book. And I had a chance to sit down with him for like 30, 40 minutes. And you're right. The dudes that actually did stuff, super chill, super cool. I mean, he talked to me like, we were neighbors or whatever. He's just super cool guy. And then you meet these guys that never do anything, and they're loudmouth and boisterous and think they know everything. Their ego's bigger than the reality. It's just stupid.
Yeah, it's tough to and it's that whole industry is fascinating, right? Because you have like I work a lot like Two Lamb, right? Two Lamb's awesome dude. That guy's done some stuff. He's got some crazy stories.
Yeah, I've seen some of stuff on TV. He seems super chill.
Oh, he's super chill, super nice in person, but he's also like probably one of the scariest people I've ever met, right? Like I'm thankful that he's a friend, but it also like if he legit would be the scariest guy ever to be coming after you.
Were you with him? Did you film the stuff at Federated Ordnance in Boise?
Some of it, yeah. I was there. I shot the Genesis video that they rolled out in collaboration with Ronin Tactics and Genesis Arms. I shot that and edited that in kind of tandem. I was shooting something with Tu and Ruthie down in Colorado in December, and they mentioned that they were doing a shoot with a bunch of brands, Holosun, Huxworks, all these guys in preparation for SHOT Show, Agency Arms, for the 5 rings pistols and the Agency Ronin rifle that has now since been rolled out at SHOT Show. They were shooting a bunch of content in Boise, and Ruthie was like, hey, you should bring, Tu wants to shoot the Gen 12. You should bring Cody, because they knew I worked with Genesis. Like, you guys should come down because it's close. And I'm like, it's kind of close. It's like a 6-hour drive. But I'm like, that'd be fun. We should make it work. So I got on the phone with Cody at Genesis Arms. I'm like, hey, man, like, have you talked to, Michael at Agency, and have you talked to them at all about maybe seeing if they'd be cool with us coming down? Or are you going down? And if you are, could I come? It's kind of the conversation we had. And he was like, yeah, I think so. And so we ended up putting something together, and we didn't have any real plan. It was just Cody and I. We were going to drive down and hang out for a couple of days and see if we could get, Tu on the shotgun. And then, if we could pick up some shots, that'd be great. And so we booted down there and ended up spending a couple of days just kind of being flies on the wall during the whole shoot for their stuff. And then I talked to Tu, and I'm like, hey, it'd be really cool if we could get you for, between shots for your other project, if we could jump you, like we get you on the, have you dump a couple of mags through the Gen 12 in the pistol bay at the place we were shooting down in Boise. And then maybe if we're going to be outside, because I think we were going to go to a shoot house. And I'm like, if we're at the shoot house, maybe we could get some stuff with you there. And he was like, yeah, sure. And so we were able to get him on the gun, and he loved it. I mean, it's hard to not love a full auto 12 gauge that runs, right? But he got on the gun, put a few mags through it, was like, loved it. And then from there, we kind of just followed them around. So we went out to Federated Ordnance, and they were shooting there. And I was like, hey, Tu, like the plan was between shots, while they were setting up for one of their shots, I was going to be able to borrow some lights and pull Tu over in full kit and get some shots with him with the Gen 12. And Josh from Holosun was there as well, and they had that new thermal optic out there that they were doing some stuff for. And like, hey, let's put the thermal on the Gen 12. Like, we put this whole thing together real quick. And so I had Tu for maybe 15 minutes at Federated to just shoot the stuff that I shot with him there, which was, if you watch that Genesis video, it's the stuff with him moving through the crates. I had 15 minutes to shoot photos and roll video of him in that scenario. And then I had to cut him loose and give all the lights back. And so we picked the shot, lit it. Cody helped, like he and I lit it, and then we shot Tu. We ran him through a couple of times, let him go. And then we had shot some other kind of B-roll stuff while they were doing, the other stuff at the range. And then I had, the next day before we were supposed to leave, I had maybe 2 magazines worth of him in full kit actually running the gun in the long range. So we got a couple of shots of him doing that. We ended up being able to cut the video together, which is pretty cool video if you haven't watched it. But it all happened.
What range were you guys shooting over there?
It was gee whiz.
Was it an indoor range?
It was indoor. We split it all over. Probably Independence, yeah.
Yeah,
nice
that used to be my range. I used to be there.
Yeah, they had that
the ops manager down there.
Man, they have that like 100-yard rifle range.
Spent a lot of time in that place, my friend.
That range is awesome for like we shot some magical stuff in there. But what ended up happening was everybody got sick. So the last day of the shoot, Cody and I were about to peace out. Well, it wasn't the last. It was the last day for us. Cody and I were going to leave. It was the day we were supposed to leave. We were going to swing by the range and kind of, say our goodbyes and see if there was any last minute stuff we could shoot. Well, we get in there, and Josh from Holosun, who's marketing director for them, was kind of directing that whole video production. Was like, "Hey, Josh, everybody's sick. Are you available to run camera for me and shoot the stuff for us this morning at the range?" And I was like, "Sure." So we're here. We could stay a little bit later than we had planned, so I jumped on the camera and shot a whole bunch of stuff for the 5 rings pistols, which is cool. And all of that was hopefully going to be rolled out at SHOT Show. The video hasn't been, like, some of the stuff we shot with 2 and those guns at that range is insane. It's awesome. It hasn't been, nobody's seen it yet because they weren't able to get the cut together in time for SHOT Show because of everything else. And Holosun, for those of you guys that don't know, they don't have a massive marketing team. Most of any of the content that's coming out of Holosun is like 3 guys, right? It's like Josh and a couple other dudes. And so they are flooded with stuff, right? But it was awesome. So we got some crazy awesome stuff out of that shoot. It was a great time. I'm glad we were able to go. But I think, did I answer your original question? What was your original question? I got distracted there a little bit.
I don't know. We got talking about all sorts of stuff, so it's all good. It's all good.
Yeah, but that was, it was cool. SHOT Show was awesome this year. It was different. First time I ever gone was 2023. That was the first time I went. Blew my mind. Was not prepared.
I love SHOT Show
for the scale of that show. I walked in the first day with all these plans and talking to all these people, and I was just like,
it doesn't happen. I love SHOT. I was so pissed I didn't get to go this year, but next year I'm definitely going. I've already got my stuff done with the NSSF. I'm going.
Nice. Yeah, it's super fun. And then, but this year it was like last year, 2023, I ended up getting over myself, and I like talked to a whole bunch of, like, every brand I could think of I met with, and I talked to their marketing directors, got a whole bunch of business cards. And then this last year, I spent almost all of my time just running between all the brands I had been working with and just kind of collaborating with them. And trying to get, but it was cool to actually have some of the stuff, like some of my work out, right? Like, I got shot some stuff with Cody that was on the agency and Genesis booth, like Cody in full kit with the gun. A couple of the gun shots that I had done of the Gen 12 and Woodland camo was up at the booth, which was cool. And that booth was busy all the whole show, which was awesome. So being able to have my work up there was awesome. Being able to know people that was there was cool. Ronan, one of the cool things that I'm stoked about this year is that last year in March, I had the opportunity to shoot some stuff in Colorado with Ronan, including what is now the cover image of his new book that is coming out in May, which is I'm pretty psyched about that, to be able to say, like,
that's
hey,
pretty cool.
I got a book cover, which is neat. So yeah, it's fun. It's hard to explain to people the feeling that you get when you see your stuff out in the wild. Like, I've been able to shoot enough things for enough people in the last 6 years that occasionally I'll see something like up on Amazon. Like, there's a lot of products I shot on Amazon, and I'll be like, oh, that's a good picture. Like, I wonder who took that. I'm like, oh, I took that picture. It's been kind of fun. Again, it makes me sound, I don't want to sound arrogant, because I try to be as humble as I can be, but it is really cool when you get to see, like,
no, man, it's okay to brag about your work. It's okay to be, not necessarily brag, but it's okay to recognize that you put out a quality product. It's okay.
Yeah, it was cool because, like, the other day, I follow AJ Buckley, like the SEAL Team show, whether you like it or not. Some guys love it, some guys hate it. I think it's a cool show. AJ Buckley's the Sonny character on that show. I met him at SHOT Show last year. Nice dude. He put a post out on his social media the other day of, like, he's psyched for the Ronin book, and I was like, oh, cool. He's looking forward to reading the book about Ronin. I'm like, I happen to shoot the cover, and I'm like, oh, that's pretty cool. Like, it's neat. It's fun.
That's super cool. And
I'm very fortunate to have had the relationships and the opportunities that I've had, and a lot. Yeah, it's that's kind of the goal. That's what drives me. Is when I first watched Lord of the Rings in the theaters when I was a kid, it was, one, I was blown away by how awesome it was, but then two, I was also thinking, like, how cool it must be for somebody to be able to sit in the theater and see all that stuff and be able to think of all of the stories behind the story, right?
Yeah.
Of like, hey, you wouldn't know what it took to get that 5 seconds of that shot, or what we had to do. It's like I was watching the behind the scenes of the Two Towers, and I remember there's one story where there's a scene where they went to shoot, like, and it was Smeagol was chasing a fish down the river, and Frodo and Sam are behind him, and it looks like it's the spring, right? But when they shot that, it was in wintertime and it had snowed. But in order to get it to look like spring, they had to spend like 8 hours the day before, like melting the snow with heat guns, so that could get that shot. I'm like, that kind of stuff. That whole shot in that entire movie is maybe 3 minutes of the whole film, right? But to be able to know the stuff that went into capturing that 3 minutes, it's the same with the Genesis Arms video. You go watch it, and it looks like Two's moving through these crates, and he does this whole thing, and I'm like, that entire video, that whole 60 seconds video, looks like it took place over hours, but was only shot in maybe half an hour of, like, there was barely nothing, and it was thrown together. It was not planned. And so it's like that kind of stuff where you start realizing all the stories behind the content we consume. That's the stuff that I get excited about. And that's what makes me, want to keep doing it. So
Well, that's rad, man. Super rad. Well, I really appreciate you coming on. I'm going to let you go because it's been 2 hours.
Yeah.
Not a boring 2 hours by any means. This has been awesome.
It went by quick.
I think we need to have a sequel at one of these times.
No, I'm all for it, man. And hopefully next time I'd have more fun stories to share. I don't know. It was, super fun, man.
I'm glad I got you on, dude. It's super cool. So where can people find you?
You can find me on my website, which it's pretty easy. It's 1156productions.com. That's got links back to my Instagram. Most of my stuff happens on Instagram right now. I'm trying to get onto YouTube, trying to get onto TikTok, but it's just time, right? So Instagram is 1156_productions, or 1156productions.com. Easy.
Awesome. What words of sage advice you want to give to our listeners before we go?
Okay. Well, it's weird because I'm not a sage, but don't be afraid to be authentic people. I think that would be the thing. Don't self-censor. Be proud of who you are and be true to yourself.
Awesome. Cool beans, man.
Yeah.
Well, thanks again, Josh, for hanging out. And we're definitely going to do it again. And one time, at some point, we're going to get to hang out in person.
That'd be tight. I'm all for it.
Right on.
Steve, man, thanks so much. I appreciate having the opportunity to do this.
Anytime. We're a family. The firearms community is more than a community. It's a family, and we need to be treating each other that way. Otherwise, we won't have it.
Oh, yeah, right. Unite or die, right? So there you go.
That's right.
Right on.
Okay.
Thanks, man. I appreciate you.
Absolutely. Thanks, man.
How do you end?
Thanks again for tuning into the Range Minded podcast. I really appreciate you guys taking time to listen or to watch. It means the world to me. If you don't mind, if you like this kind of content, go ahead and like and share it with your homies. If you're listening on the podcast platform, give us a review. It would help a bunch. Also, if you want to reach out to the show, you can just jump straight to the website, rangemindedpodcast.com. There's a way to chat. There's some product links there too for some deals with some other manufacturers. Again, it's just the way of the game. We appreciate you guys. And don't forget, you got to take somebody shooting. Be safe.